Now, this is not for lack of research on my part. This is for absolute fear of someone being like, this is a great idea. It worked in a fantasy novel. I'm gonna jump. Welcome to A Book and a Dream with Megan O. Russell, an author's adventure in writing, reading, and being an epic fangirl. Hello, my name is Megan O. Russell, and welcome to episode 10 of A Book and a Dream. Today, I want to talk to you about the horrible decisions that are made in books and the pressure it can put on authors. Now, what exactly do I mean by this? I guess my basic point is sometimes people see things in a book and they decide it would be a good idea to try them in real life. The biggest example of this that I personally can think of is Into the Wild. Into the Wild is about Chris McKinless. He decided to go out into the Alaskan wilderness with basically nothing, ended up in a bus, and died. Now, they found his journals, they found pictures, it became this whole book. I think there's 2 movies, maybe 1 movie, not really sure. But people idolize this. They idolize his journey into the woods and they worship this bus. Now, we can have a completely different conversation about the worthwhile nature of communing with the world and living off the grid. Totally different conversation. My problem with it is that people hike out to the bus where he died, like it's a pilgrimage, and they cross the river that he couldn't cross, so he died. And people have to get rescued every year because they're trying to do the same journey that got him killed. Now, granted, you can't blame the guy. He never planned to have his journal published. He died. Other people found the body, things like that. But still, people read this book and they make these life choices based on that. In a much smaller version, you can look at Harry Potter and Platform 9 3/4. Kids ram themselves into that train station wall trying to get to Hogwarts. Granted, as far as I know, there's never been any horrible life-altering injuries from this, but a lot of kids with bloody noses, and I'd feel really guilty if I had caused that. Again, not trying to shame J.K. Rowling. She did not mean for kids to bloody their noses getting to Hogwarts, but I do have that fear because I knew that going into it. So since I have this foreknowledge, I am terrified of people trying weird things based on what I write. So there are some things like in the Tethering series, there is a mountain and people jump off of it. Now, it's a real mountain. It is. I've climbed it. It's there. It's gorgeous. If you ever get to climb Cadillac Mountain in Maine, you should go. It's amazing. Hike up before dawn. Glorious experience. But the bit that they jump off of does not actually exist. If you were to do the pre-dawn pilgrimage up Mount Cadillac, then you would not be able to find a place to take the jump that they jump. Now, this is not for lack of research on my part. This is for absolute fear of someone being like, this is a great idea. It worked in a fantasy novel. I'm gonna jump. Don't. Please don't do that. That's a lot of pressure. So I made it impossible. The same thing in the Anna Elilbrea series. She is an inker and a illegal healer and occasionally dabbles in poison. The poison that she mixes is from berries that do not exist. Not because I didn't do my research on how to poison someone. Quite frankly, if the police looked in my searches for poisons, I would be suspected of hurting a lot of people with herbals. Like, it's a lot of research, but I went in the end with something that could not be replicated. You cannot make this poison because those berries do not exist. So no one can pin it on me if someone gets a horrible idea from the book. It doesn't exist. Now, granted, when you're writing a book, you can't have your characters make all the best decisions that you think your readers should emulate. If you have a relationship between 2 teenagers and they all make the exact right decisions, yeah, that's not going to be a very interesting story. Good books are based on the failings and triumphs of mankind. So people do have to make some bad decisions. They have to choose the wrong guy before they choose the right guy. They have to turn their back on people who could save them and end up getting a few people killed. It's what makes fiction and fantasy interesting. And there are some things in my books that my characters do that I would absolutely not recommend doing in real life, and not just for like romantic or practical reasons. Hopefully no one's ever like chasing you and going to kill your whole family. Hopefully that's not a situation you're ever in, so their reactions to that isn't so much applicable. However, choosing to drive without a license, that's a terrible idea. You should not drive a car unless you know how to drive a car. My characters do things like that. They choose to drive things that they should not be driving. Also, they drink water from all kinds of places where you should not drink that. You should not go to a forest pond and just go, I'm so thirsty, and drink that water. In fantasy, it's not a great idea to be like, and then they got out their pot and boiled the water so it was safe after keeping it boiling at a steady temperature for this many minutes so that it would be good to drink. No one wants to hear that. So I skip over the practicalities of not dying of, parasites and bacteria to get them going, and they just have water and we can move on. However, if you are planning on getting lost in the wilderness anytime soon, maybe buy a life straw or like one of those little iodine bottles, because if you choose to do what Anna Vilbrea does and just drink water out of all sorts of water sources, it's not going to take an evil regime to kill you. You're probably just going to end up dead from drinking bad water. So, little things like that I do allow to sneak in. Big things like jumping off of cliffs and poisoning people, I kind of stretch reality to the point that you couldn't really match it, so I don't have that horrible guilt weighing on my shoulders. Now, I know that we've all read books and seen things, and we've been like, I want to try that awesome sword trick, or wow, I should really go parachuting, or let me run headfirst into platform 9 3/4, the usual. So what have you picked up from a fantasy book where you've decided to try that horrible idea? Did you, like me, climb into the back of all the wardrobes you could find where you shouldn't be, searching for Narnia, and bang on the back of them asking Aslan to come get you? I don't know. Maybe that was just me. But did you ever have any of those moments? Are you still having some of those moments? Have you decided to, drop everything and go on a round the world trip to find yourself? What book has influenced you to do something that, in hindsight, may not have been the best idea? Drop it in the comments below. Reach out to me on social media. I am desperate to know what bad ideas you've gotten. Hopefully they aren't as bad as hiking to a bus in the wilderness. But let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, like, follow. Don't forget, if you're watching this in video form, we do have a Book and a Dream podcast available basically wherever podcasts are, so you can listen while you're commuting or doing dishes, which is really cool. So follow it as a podcast if you prefer that format, or just subscribe on YouTube, follow on social media, and I will see you next time. In between this time and the next video, there will be a special audio-only interview with a special guest. I will drop a video so that you know when the audio is available, but keep an eye out because it's coming soon. Until next time.